Hey guys, in this video I'll be going over the startup for the Hornet. First, you need to make sure your parking brake is on. It should be on by default, but if it's off, you can turn it on by left-clicking and scrolling down on your mouse wheel to pull it out. The reason it's important to make sure your parking brake is on is because if the parking brake is off, then your navigation system is not going to align correctly. Then you can close the canopy. You can either hold left control on your keyboard and click C, or you can hold down on this switch right here. Then you need to turn on the battery. Then you need to turn on the APU. The APU is the auxiliary power unit, which is a small engine in the back of the plane that creates compressed air to start the main engines. You turn it on with this switch, and you need to wait for the green light to come on. Once the green light is on, you can start your engines. I'm going to start the right engine first, so I'm going to right-click on the engine crank switch and wait for the RPM to go up to 25%. Once the RPM hits 25%, you need to put the right throttle into idle. You can do that by holding right shift on your keyboard and clicking home. And then you should see the RPM start to go up. Once the crank switch flips back to the middle, that means your engine is on. I'm going to go ahead and start the left engine. Wait for it to get to 25%. Then put the left throttle into idle by holding right Alt and clicking home. Then the RPM should go up, and you need to just wait for the crank switch to flip back to the middle. Once both of your engines are started, you can turn off the APU. Or you don't have to if you don't want to, because once both your engines are started, after about a minute, the APU will turn itself off. I want to go over a quick note about the fire warning system here. If you've ever seen any other startup guides, you've probably heard them talk about the fire warning system. You don't have to do it, it's completely optional. I never do it when I start up. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because if you do it, it will automatically turn off your bleed air. And once your engines are started, you're going to have to turn it back on. And the way you do that is by going to the bleed air switch here and rotating it all the way around back to the normal position. But once again, you only need to do that if you tested the fire warning system with this switch here. Okay, now that we have our engine started, let's go ahead and start up the systems in the plane. First, I'll turn on my oxygen with this switch here. Then I need to turn on all my screens. I can turn on the left and right screens by putting the brightness switch to day. Then scroll up on the brightness knob here to turn on your middle screen. And you can turn on your heads-up display by scrolling up on this brightness knob here. Next, we need to start aligning the navigation system. Before we start aligning, I'm going to remind you one more time, make sure you have your parking brake on, because if you try to align the navigation system without the parking brake on, then it's not going to work. I'm going to click on the base of my stick to get it out of the way. And when all your screens turn on, you should see this screen here show your navigation display. If it doesn't show it, you can press the menu button in the middle until you go to the support page, and then click HSI. And that should bring up your navigation display. Then, to start aligning the navigation system, go off to your right and find this switch here and set it to INS ground. That will start a ground alignment. Once you do that, you want to go back to your middle screen and press stored heading. If you have stored heading activated, that will make your alignment shorter. If you don't select stored heading, it'll take about 9 minutes to align the navigation system, but if you have stored heading selected, it'll only take about 2 minutes. So I'd recommend always selecting stored heading. Once the navigation system starts aligning, you're going to see this number countdown, and once it's done aligning, you should see it say OK right here. Normally, while you're waiting for this align, you would start turning on other systems, but for the case of this tutorial, I fast-forwarded it about 2 minutes. And now that my alignment is finished, you can see it says OK right here. If you see this map come up, it might be hard to read the words. You can use the gain switch to turn down the brightness of the map. Or if you want to get rid of the map, you can press the mode switch here and deselect the map button. But as you can see, it says OK here, which means my alignment is finished. So when your alignment is finished, you can go back to the INS switch and set it to IFA. Now, in some cases, you might want to set it to nav. Most of the time, when you're flying in DCS, when you're done aligning, you're going to set it to IFA. However, if you're flying in a mission that doesn't have GPS available, then you're going to set it to nav. The way you can know if the mission has GPS is by clicking escape on your keyboard and going to the briefing and looking at the mission date. If you're flying in a mission that takes place during or after 1986, then the mission will have GPS available. If the mission takes place before 1986, there will be no GPS. As you can see, my mission here takes place during 2016, so I have GPS available. So in DCS, most of the time, you're going to have GPS available, and you can set it to IFA. However, If you do not have GPS available, you want to set it to nav. The difference between the two is that IFA stands for in-flight alignment, which means that as you're flying, the GPS will automatically update the navigation system in the plane to make sure it's as accurate as possible. However, if your mission doesn't have GPS available, you want to just set it to nav, and that will just use the navigation system in the plane without getting updates from GPS. Now that our alignment is finished, you don't have to worry about the parking brake anymore, and you could turn it off if you want, but for now I'm just going to leave it on. Now let's turn on some more systems in the plane. First, if you go to one of your displays and press the menu button to go to the support page, if you click FCS for flight controls, you can see a bunch of X's here. That means there are some errors in the flight controls and we need to reset it. And the way you can do that is by pressing the reset button here. And you can see all the X's have gone away, which means our flight controls are ready now. Now I can turn on my radar by setting it to operate. Next thing I'm going to do is set my trim for takeoff. If you look at the flight controls page, you can see this thing here that says stab. This is for your horizontal stabilizer. The horizontal stabilizer is this thing on the back of the plane here. What you want to do is press this button right here that says takeoff trim. If you do this, it will set your horizontal stabilizer to 12 degrees. As you can see, it's more pointed up now, and that will make sure it's at the right angle for takeoff. Now let's turn on some other systems in the plane. This switch that says hook bypass, if you're on the ground, you set it to field. What this does is that when you're coming in for landing and you lower your landing gear, this light here called the AOA indexer will turn on. If you have it set to field, it will be on like normal. But if you have this switch set to carrier, then the AOA indexer will be blinking, which is a reminder to lower your hook for a carrier landing. But since we're doing ground operations right now, we're going to have it set to field. Next, I'm going to turn on the radar altimeter right here. When you turn it on, you should hear some warning tones. That's just the test system running. You can turn it on by scrolling up on this wheel. You can use the wheel to adjust this arrow here, which will set the warning altitude. So I'm just going to set it to 200 feet above the ground. Then you can uncage the backup horizon by scrolling on it once with your mouse wheel, and you should see the red off flag go away. Next, I'm going to turn on the IFF. The IFF is the Identify Friend or Foe system, which allows you to tell if what you're looking at on your radar is a friendly or hostile. First, you click the IFF button. Now when you click it, nothing's going to happen, but that's normal. You hold the on button for a second, and then the IFF should turn on. Then you can click clear to get rid of this stuff on the screen. Next thing we need to do is turn on the data link. Now if you click the data link button, this will open the first data link menu, and this has to do with the automatic carrier landing system, but we don't need to worry about this right now. What you want to do is click the data link button again, and that will open the second menu, which is the link 16 data link. It's really important to have this on, so hold the on button, and that will turn on your link 16. And once again, if you want to get this stuff out of your display, you can press the clear button. This next step is optional. It's only if you're going to be using a data card. If there is a data card for the mission you're playing in, or if you have your own custom data card you want to load in, you can load that into the plane. The way you can do that is by clicking / to open the communication menu, then click ground crew, and then click DTC interface, and then click show.
Copy.
It's going to open this menu. If there are any DTCs for the mission you're flying in, you can select them here and you can load them into your plane by clicking load. Also, if you have any custom DTCs you made yourself, you can click file here and click import to load them in. Also, if you want, you can use this tab here to adjust the settings for the DTC if you want to customize some things before you load it into your plane. Right now, the only things you can customize for the DTC in DCS are the countermeasures settings and the radio settings, but later on they're going to add some more stuff. When you're done, you can just click this X here. Now once you have your DTC loaded into your plane, you need to load it into the computer system. The way you do that is by clicking the menu button until you get to the support page, and then you click mummy right here, and you can press on these buttons around the screen to load in different things from the DTC. For example, TACAN, radar, harm. However, keep in mind, in DCS, the only things modeled in DTC so far is just radio settings and countermeasures settings. So because of that, the only buttons that work right now are the COM button and the ALR 67 button. So what you can do is press those buttons, and once they're loaded in, you should see some rectangles surrounding the words. If I try to click something else like TACAN, As you can see, nothing happens because it's not modeled in DCS right now. Once you've done that, you have your DTC information loaded into the plane, and then you can just click the menu button to go back to the main menu, and that's that. But once again, the data card is completely optional. The next thing you can do is turn on your helmet-mounted queuing system. If you turn the brightness switch all the way up, after a couple seconds, you should see your HMCS turn on. If you look straight forward, it's going to go away, but when you look off to the side, you can see your HMCS. When you turn the brightness switch on, if the HMCS is not displayed, then you probably have night vision activated instead. If you want to equip your HMCS, you can click backslash, go to ground crew, change helmet-mounted device, and you can click Setup JHMCS. Once your HMCS is turned on, you need to align it. Aligning it is not optional. If you're doing a cold start, you do need to align it or it will be a little bit off. The way you can align it is by going to the support menu, pressing HMD, and this option HMD will only show up here if your HMD is turned on. So make sure it's turned on, then press HMD. You're going to need 2 keybinds to align it. The first keybind you're going to need is the cage uncage button. The next thing you're going to need is the TDC. You can bind it with buttons here, or you can bind it as axes. So in the HMD page, click Align, and you should see a cross on your HMD and also on your HUD. And then what you need to do is align the crosses. Don't worry about getting it perfect because later we can fine tune it. And once they're aligned, you need to hold down the cage uncage button. If you just press it, it's not going to work. Make sure you hold it down. Once it says Align OK on the bottom, you can let go of the button. And now I can use my TDC to move these crosses here to align them. If you press the cage uncage button, you can see it says roll on the bottom, and now I can use my TDC to align up this bottom cross. If you want to, you can press cage uncage again and it will go back to the DXDY mode where you can fine tune the position again. But don't worry about getting it completely perfect. As long as it's close enough, it's fine. Once you're done, you can deselect the align button here, and then your HMD will be ready. The last thing to do is arm your ejection seat, and that's how you start up a Hornet. Now I'll go over starting up on a carrier. Starting up on a carrier is almost exactly the same as starting up on the ground. There's only one difference, and that is how you align the navigation system. When you align the navigation system on the carrier, instead of setting it to ground, you want to set it to CV. Then you can click stored heading like normal. Besides that, the carrier alignment is exactly the same as the ground alignment. Once it's done, it'll say OK, and then you can set it to IFA or nav. That's how to start up the Hornet in DCS. Thanks for checking out this video, and I'll see you later.